In the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon His last and beloved Messenger Muhammad, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all. The title of this presentation is The Sign in Ants, and how to devise practical applications in our life from pondering upon how Allah God created the ants. Now, as an introduction to this presentation, Allah God Almighty tells us a story in the Quran, in the 5th chapter, about a man who killed his brother. And this man didn't know what to do with the body of his brother, with this dead body. So Allah God Almighty sent a crow to show him how to bury the body of his brother, the dead body. So as Allah relates in the Quran in chapter 5 verse 31, which reads, "Then Allah God sent a crow who scratched the ground to show him to hide the dead body of his brother. He said, 'Woe to me, am I not even able to be as this crow and to hide the dead body of my brother?' Then he became one of those who regretted." So as I said, Allah God Almighty sent a crow to teach this person how to bury the dead. So what we learn from this story, one of the important things we learn from it is that Allah is teaching us that if you as a person don't know how to do anything or a certain matter, then look and ponder upon ponder upon the creatures of Allah. So in effect, the creatures is like a school that you learn from it everything. So again, one of the lessons we learn from the story, that we need to ponder upon the creatures and of Allah God Almighty to learn practical applications that we can utilize in our life, like this man learned from the crow how to bury the dead. So from this point of view, today we will ponder upon the creation of the ants and how Allah created the ants, and we want to learn from them practical applications that we can better our life. So in effect, Allah is teaching us that when you don't know something, ponder upon my creatures, like the ant, the bees, the spider, the camel, and learn from them everything that you want to learn, instead of going to people and learning by trial and error and following conjecture and guesswork. Your life is much more precious than following the guessworks of people and wasting hundreds of years in pursuing something that's based on guesswork. So let's ponder upon the ants. Now the sign in the ants we can find in the Quran in chapter 27 verse 18, which reads, "Till when they came to the valley of the ants, one of the ants said, 'O ants, enter your dwellings, lest Solomon and his soldiers should crush you while they feel not.'" So here Allah Almighty is telling us a story that when Prophet Sulaiman and his soldiers were walking through a valley, the ant, as is mentioned in the verse, said, "O ants, enter your dwellings, lest Solomon and his soldiers should crush you while they feel not." So if we ponder upon this verse, and let's see what knowledge that Allah teaches us from pondering upon the ants. And if we ponder deeply upon the verse, we see that there are various aspects that Allah draws our attention to. For example, Allah wants us to ponder upon how He created the ants. When it said in the verse, "came to the valley of the ants." Another thing to ponder upon, that the ants can talk. When Allah said here, "O ants, enter your dwellings." So the ants, they can talk, they can communicate with each other. Another thing to ponder upon is that one ant can give commands, instructions to hundreds of ants at the same time. Because in the verse, one ant said to the ants, and there are hundreds of ants in the colony. Another thing to ponder upon is that the dwellings of the ant, or the habitation of the ants, or the colony of the ants, to ponder upon how Allah created these colonies, and to learn engineering designs and concepts from them to utilize in our life, to better our life. And also to ponder upon the way the ants can enter into their dwellings or their homes. So let's start by pondering upon the creation of the ants and how Allah created the ant. Now, in the Quran, the most quality linked to the name of Allah, the name of God, which is Allah, is the quality of mercy. So the first verse in the Quran, it starts, in the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. So all of the creation of Allah is based on mercy. So if we look at an ant, we see that the ant, one of its functions, it cuts leaves, it breaks small objects. Now, if we compare the size of a leaf, a plant leaf, and the grains that the ants can crush, compared to the size of the ant, we see that the comparison, that the size of the ant is so small compared to these objects. So how Allah made it easier for the ant to perform these functions? If we look at the jaws of the ant, as you can see, the ant has 2 jaws, and if we analyze the elements found in these jaws, we see that it contains zinc, which is a metallic element. So glory be to Allah Almighty, Allah placed zinc in these jaws, and they are plated with zinc material. So the reason for this is out of the mercy of Allah Almighty unto the ant, because this mixing or plating with zinc, it increases the mechanical strength, stiffness and hardness of the jaws at least 3-folds. So as a result of this, the ant can easily cut the leaves or break small grains and objects. So zinc plating and zinc mixing like a composite material. So how to devise practical applications in our life? Now, since we learned so far that one of the reasons for including the zinc in the jaws of the ant is to increase mechanical strength. So we as humans, if we plate our cutting tools, our objects with zinc, and we treat them with zinc, meaning that we put zinc inside the material as well, that should give us stronger, stiffer tools to work with. As you can see on the screen, people, after years of trial and error, they found that when they coat cutting tools with zinc, they give them an increased mechanical strength, stiffness and hardness. So we see that Allah teaches the believer this in the Quran in a matter of minutes, such that the Muslims will be the teacher of others. But because the majority of Muslims, they deserted the Quran, they went away from the Quran, they find themselves in the low and humiliated state they find themselves into. Another practical application from this knowledge we can find in the health of our teeth. If we analyze human teeth element-wise, we see that also, glory be to Allah God Almighty, zinc is present in our teeth. So as Allah placed zinc in the jaws of the ant, zinc is present as well in our teeth. And we can learn the function of this is that as zinc increases the strength of the jaws of the ant, here zinc increases the strength of our teeth and the hardness of the surface. So what we can learn from this as well is that there are so many people, they have the problem of premature tooth decay and bacteria cutting away in their teeth. So, and these people, they take care of their teeth, they wash them, they brush their teeth, and they take calcium and these elements that increase the strength of the tooth, but they find that they have to go to the dentist repeatedly. So they find that their teeth are weak and there are so many problems. Now, how can you learn from pondering upon the sign of the ant? Now, when these people, the people coming to realize nowadays that the importance of zinc in our body, these people, when they do a blood test, they find that the concentration of zinc in the blood is low. And we can know, and we learn now, that if the concentration of zinc in your blood is low, this means that your teeth will be weaker. So now they treat a lot of these problematic cases with zinc, taking, for example, food rich in zinc. So we see how can we, from pondering upon the creatures of Allah, how can we find the practical applications in our life. That's one very important thing I want to illustrate. So another application is that also one of the mechanisms that Allah the Almighty installed in the ant and the jaws of the ant to make its life easier, the ant's life easier, is that the jaws of the ant, they vibrate, they oscillate back and forth hundreds and thousands of times per second. So the jaws of the ant, they have an oscillatory motion or a vibratory motion. Now this produces so much energy in a small amount of time, vibrational energy, which breaks the links between the molecules and the proteins and the molecules in the leaf or the grain that the ant is trying to crush or to cut. So it makes it easier. Now, one practical application of this in our life is in hydraulic diggers. As you can see, people, after again years of trial and error, this knowledge that Allah teaches us in a matter of seconds from the Quran, people, because they are arrogant, most of them, and they don't want to hear the guidance of God, so after years they found that if the cutting tool or the digger is vibrating back and forth, oscillating, it makes the function of breaking the rocks easier. So that's another application. Okay, another application of this is to ponder upon that in the Quranic verse, Allah teaches us that the ants can talk. So let's ponder upon how the ants can talk. Again, the answer to understanding the communication of ants is found in the same Quranic verse. Look, glory be to Allah, the Quran is a book that explains itself. It's a self-contained book. It explains itself. The best explanatory book for the Quran is the Quran itself. So we want to know how the ants communicate with each other. Let's go back to the verse. At the end of the verse, it's stated there that the ant said that Sulaiman and his soldiers feared that Sulaiman and his soldiers will crush them, and they feel not. They don't feel us. So we learn from this that the understanding of the ant of how communication occurs is by feeling. So the ant did not say that Solomon will not see us or will not hear us, but said will not feel us. So this is very important to understand how ants communicate. Now, suppose that you say, I feel cold, or I feel cold air near to my body. What does this mean? This means that the vibrations and the vibration of the air atoms, they touch your skin and you feel that it's cold. And how do you feel? By receptors on your skin and by hair. The hair on your skin, when it vibrates, when it oscillates due to the flowing air, you feel something. So this means that on the body of the ant, it should have hair on the body that can sense mechanical vibrations. So we learn from the Quranic verse that the primary mechanism on how the ants, they can communicate, can they feel the environment, and can sense the environment, is by touch or feeling. So as if we look at the body of the ant, we see that it's covered with hair. And this hair, again, it can sense mechanical vibrations from the environment. So when Solomon and his soldiers were walking or marching, the ants sensed the vibrations in the earth, and that's the way the ant could sense the presence of Solomon and his soldiers. So that is the primary mechanism of how ants communicate. And if we think deeply about this, we see that always and most times there are physical or mechanical contact between the ants. So when the ants, they produce shaking or vibration in their body, they can communicate by these mechanical vibrations. And we see also that the ants, they have antenna. They have like two antennas on their head. And again, they are covered with hair as well. So with the antenna and with their body, they can produce mechanical vibrations to communicate, and they can sense as well mechanical vibrations. Now, what kind of practical application we can learn from this? Now, as I said, in the Quranic verse, Allah teaches us that one ant can issue a command, or can communicate with hundreds of ants at the same time. This is very similar to our communication, wireless communication, and how people nowadays, they communicate with, for example, mobile or cell phones. A person can send a text message to hundreds of people at the same time. So, if we look at the antenna of the ant, it's used to produce vibrations, waves, and it's used to pick up waves. And if we link this to a verse in the Quran in chapter 32 verse 7, which reads, "Who perfected everything He has created, and He began the creation of human from mud." So Allah is telling us here that He perfected everything He has created. This means, in this context, that the antenna of the ant is the best design for an antenna to harness mechanical vibrations, and we can extend this further that this is the best antenna to harness electromagnetic radiation or waves in general. So if we take the design, if we learn from the design and the creation of Allah God Almighty for the antenna of the ant and try to mimic that in real life, as you can see on the screen, here is a very kind of modern antenna. And they found out by experiments that if you have a central beam and you have small beams coming out of it, then this antenna will harness will harness more energy, meaning higher efficiency. So the best antennas nowadays are based on the antenna of the mosquito and the ant. So here is a real life application from pondering upon the ants and how they communicate. Again, Allah teaches the believers this knowledge from the Quran such that they will be a teacher of others. Okay, another thing to ponder upon is that Allah mentions the dwellings of the ants, or the homes of the ants, or the habitation or the colony of the ants in the verse. So one thing to ponder upon, if you look at ants outside of their colony or outside of their home, you see hundreds of ants around the habitation or the colony. Now, when they sense danger from the vibrations of the earth, you see that the hundreds of ants, they enter their home in a matter of seconds. Hundreds of ants, they enter this small hole to their colony in a matter of seconds. So we need to ponder how Allah Almighty made it easy for the ants to enter their home or their colony in a matter of seconds. And that's out of the mercy again of Allah Almighty unto the ants. Because if they couldn't enter the colony fast enough, they might be crushed by, for example, a person walking near to their colony. So if we look at how Allah created the ant colony and how He taught the ants to build the roads, let's say the roads in their colony, as you can see on the right, you see one kind of main characteristic is that the angle between the branching roads and the main road, or the side roads and the main road, they are not perpendicular, they are not 90 degrees angles. But if we compare that to how humans build their roads, their main road and their side roads or the branching roads, we see that they build them with 90 degrees. Most of the roads are 90 degrees perpendicular roads. Now, we want to know the importance of having side roads or branching roads with an angle different than 90 degrees compared to that with a 90 degrees angle. So for this, I made a computer model, as you can see on the screen. On the right, we have a model for a main road and a side road having 90 degrees angles, and the computer can calculate the flow of cars in the road, and on the left we have a model for the roads in the ant colony, and you can see that the angles are not perpendicular, and again the computer can calculate the pattern of the flow of ants in their colony. And the computer gave me a very kind of astounding result, is that on the right we have, for the ants, we have a smooth flow of ants in their colony, and on the right we have a kind of turbulent and an unorganized flow of cars in the way we design roads. And that can be explained by looking at this figure. So on the right, if we have a car that wants to go to the side road or the branching road, and we have a 90 degrees angle, then the car needs to slow down so much to enter the side road. And this slowing down of the car will slow down the cars in the main road as well. So you'll have a traffic jam and a traffic kind of problems in traffic. But if we look at how Allah taught the ants to build their roads in their colony, shown on the left, we see that the ant, when it wants to go to the side road to enter, for example, a certain place in the colony, it doesn't need to slow down because it's smooth flow, because of this angle which is different than 90 degrees. So this smooth flow means that when an ant enters the hole of the colony, the entrance of the colony, it doesn't need to slow down, and thus the second ant will enter very fast to the colony. So it's like the first ant enters the colony, it doesn't delay, it goes smoothly into the colony, so the second ant follows it. But if the colony was like 90 degrees, that the way we design our roads, then there will be a slowing down of the entering ant, and that will make a kind of a back wave of slowing the ants. So one practical application of this is that if we change the way we design our roads to make the angles between the main road and the side road or the branching road, to make it like the ants, smooth kind of angle, or not 90 degrees angle, to make it like here's the main road, here's the side road, you have this kind of flow. That's one practical application. Okay, another practical application we learned from pondering upon the habitation or the colony of ants. Here we have the mound or the habitation of termites, which are sometimes called white ants. Now, if we ponder upon how Allah taught these termites to build their habitation or their home, we see that, for example, in this case, the temperature inside the termite mound or home needs to be maintained at 31 degrees Celsius, always, for a certain reason. But if we look at the surrounding environment, in the night the temperature can drop to about 0 degrees centigrade, and in the day it can reach to 40. So we have 40 degrees difference in the outside environment, yet the temperature inside the termites habitation or the mound, it's constant at 31 degrees. Again, we have a 40 degrees difference in temperature, while the inside of the home of the ants, in this case, it remains at 31 degrees. So the application here is, if we learn how Allah taught the ants to build their, let's say, ventilation system, the air conditioning system inside the home, and try to mimic that into real applications and engineering applications, then we can get a better quality and a better efficiency for air conditioning systems. So if we take certain aspects, first, take the first one. As you can see on the right, if we look at the ventilation shafts in the termites home or the mound or the habitation, Allah taught them to build shafts or chimneys to ventilate the home. And again, if we look at the angles between the side ducts and the main ducts, again, it's not 90 degrees, they're not perpendicular. But if we compare that by the way we build our air conditioning systems and central heating systems, we see that the angles between the pipes 90 degrees and the angle between the air ducts 90 degrees. Again, if we make a computer model, the computer shows that in the case of the house or the homes of the ant, we have a smooth flow of air, which means that a very small pressure can cause air movement in the home of the ants or the mound of the ants. But in our systems, we need a very high pressure from the pumps to make to continue the circulation of the air. So one application of this is that if we change again the angles of the pipes in our homes so that they are not perpendicular, and change the angle of the air ducts that are not 90 degrees, then we will use less energy to circulate the air and have better efficiency. That's the first application of this. Okay. One practical application, as you can see on the screen, here is a shopping mall which an engineer called Mike Pierce did. It's shown on the right. It's called an Eastgate building, and some of the design concepts of this building is taken from the termites mound or the home of the termites regarding the ventilation of this building. And some interesting facts about it is that this building uses 10% of the energy, only 10% of the energy, compared that if it was air conditioned or heated using conventional systems. It uses only 10% of the energy of those systems. Also, the temperature of this building remains stable all year round, and when they constructed this building, it saved about $3.5 million in construction cost, because it doesn't use the air conditioning systems that we are accustomed to. They're very expensive ones, expensive to construct and expensive to maintain as well, to operate. So we see a lot of benefits in this design, in taking concepts from Allah, what Allah created, and utilize them in engineering designs. And again, as I said, Allah wants the Muslims to be the pioneers in this. But again, because they deserted Allah. Another kind of application of this. Now, in previous presentations, I talked about the creation of the bees and what we learned from the creation of Allah God Almighty for the bee hive. And here I talked about the ants. So what I started doing is doing a hybrid structure based on the bees and the ants. Here are the first pictures from this hybrid structure. As you can see, we have, for example, on the left, we have one kind of apartment constructed based on the beehive. So we have, in this case, 6 rooms, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we have in the middle a duct shown in red. This is not a room. This is a central duct or a central shaft that goes through all the way through. It's open to the sky, and from the ground it has input air ducts. And we can make apartments and buildings based on this by putting the same structure on top of each other, making floors, as you can see on the right. Now, this is the first views of this hybrid structure. This is my design, taken from, or the design I learned from the pondering upon the ants and the bees. And here we have further details of the structure. So in the walls adjacent to the central shaft, they would have 2 ducts or 2 openings. One, as you can see on the right, one at the top, it allows hot air to leave, and one at the bottom, it allows cold air to enter the rooms. And on the wall adjacent, or not adjacent, but on the other side of the room, we have a window which should be placed at a middle distance between the hot air duct and the cold one. So what will happen is that this design will ensure always a constant or an adaptive flow of air through the rooms, so that any increase in temperature, it will be sucked or taken out from the rooms, maintaining a constant temperature while the temperature outside changes. Now, if we build a structure like the one you can see on the screen, this has so many advantages. For example, firstly, excellent mechanical strength, stability, earthquake resistant, sound proofing. It soundproofing, thermal insulation. That's excellent for winter. It has an insulation for just by this hexagonal design, it insulates heat, and also it will have an excellent ventilation system that you will not need to use conventional air conditioning systems or heating systems. These are the first stages in this hybrid structure, but I wanted to show you a glimpse of things to come. And to know more details about this topic, please visit my website at www.quran-miracle.com, and you can email me at zaidquran@gmail.com, and may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon you all.